right now. I'm listening to the man who's given me the soundtrack to my life since I was a wee little kid.
Oh man, what does that
Thomas,
make me, by the way?
this is such a pleasure for me. Like seriously, I first of all just want to start off by saying thank you, thank you, thank you,
Oh,
thank you for so many classic scores over the years.
thanks
I
for
do want
saying
to,
so.
yeah, I do want to first start off by asking. You seem to be one of the few composers that still favors live orchestration, utilizing actual strings and music that doesn't necessarily get created specifically within a computer, although you do mix elements of that into your scores as well. Can you just tell me just a little bit about, just seeing as how you've gone through a couple of decades in this industry, the changes that you see in composing music today and how you apply both classical and new techniques to your score for Elemental?
Well, it really has changed, hasn't it, in terms of computers? Reliable computers, I guess, begin in the mid 2000s or something, and everything kind of stabilizes. And I think it makes music available to anyone, whether you're trained in music or not. And not that I think you have to be trained, because I think the great thing about computers and synthesizers is it really allows imaginative results, no matter who you are, no matter how trained you are. And I think also resources have, for the most part, I think there's just less of them. So people, I think, rely more on sample libraries and things like that. So I start, in the early to mid 80s, when synthesizers and sequences are just beginning. And I'm trained classically, but not that I feel like I was amazing. But I find myself interested in this new technology, and I find that I think I have a talent at sequencing, and those are my opportunities to begin with. I was kind of a synth guy, quote unquote, in the 80s, and did a lot of teen comedies and things, and no one was really hiring me to do orchestral scores. And then by around 91, I worked with Robert Altman on a movie called The Player, and I was able to use a small amount of orchestra, and it was a Hollywood movie. I was able to kind of write a big Hollywood finish. And then a couple of movies came after that I was able to start, utilizing strings and colors, orchestral colors, and kind of mix them with stuff that I had done in my own studio. And a big challenge at the beginning was, how do those two things mix? If you have a live orchestra, with a left, center, right microphone in a kind of proscenium setting, how do you put, other elements of electronic elements in? And I think I started dealing with those issues in the early 90s, and it was very satisfying to think, how does a orchestral color empty into an electronic color? And I was always, more than anything, just wanting to get a pleasure out of my ears, and, kind of more experience led to more experimentation in terms of how much I could do any of those things. And I end up, over, a lot of time, kind of the composer that I am.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and you're always producing melodies that they just they stand out to me so much compared to a lot of what I hear today, and specifically on the score for Elemental. You've used the sitar in recent scores, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, Victorian Abdul. Can you tell me a little bit about its utilization here with the score for Elemental, and also too what other instruments you turn to give this a very universal cultural sound?
Right. I mean, which was a big kind of what do I do? An imaginary world, kind of parallel to our world, with similar issues, but utterly imagined, and implied cultures. But obviously, I just had to just start trying colors, and working with my small group of players to just see what colors worked, and to ultimately ask myself why. And then after that, put them in front of Pete Sohn's ears, the directors, and see what he thought. Did this say too much? Did it say too little? Did it imply something culturally without pointing, and without being offensive? And bit by bit, we kind of found language, metal patterns, drum patterns, vocal patterns, and chatters, and solo voices, and just started seeing what worked, which is typically how I do work, is what I guess I would call allowable vocabulary. What musical vocabulary do you hear in a movie that your ear says, I buy this. It doesn't feel foreign to the movie. It makes sense. I'm involved. I'm not scratching my head. Meaning the listener viewer. And that's typically how I want to work is I want to be reacting to what I'm seeing and hearing as opposed to, putting forth musical ideas. I want musical ideas to come at me.
Yeah. You mentioned a voice before. I love some of the vocals that are performed on this score. It really helps to give such a soothing quality to the music. Can you tell me just a little bit about gathering those talented artists together, recording that, and how you all came up with some of the melodies that you found?
The players I work with, one of the players named Steve Tavoloni plays an iwi, which is an electronic wind instrument. So much of what you're hearing vocally is processed vocal played through a controller, a breath controller device. I've worked with Steve since maybe 1991 or something. Oh, wow. And he's an amazing sound designer. He's also an amazing player and a programmer. And so when I would get together with him, he would have some of these sounds and we'd say, whoa, this is great. Here's something, let's put that over. And we'd like it or not like it. We'd like phrases. We would, again, in a very kind of improvisatory way and in a very loose, informal environment, try to make some of this stuff rise up. And then try to capture it. Butterfly net it is kind of what I find myself saying. How do I capture these whimsical and informal musical ideas coming at me and say, wow, what if that went there? And and then sharing them with Pete and seeing where we went next.
That's really cool. So you've done movies with Pixar before, obviously. I believe this is your fourth title that you've done with them. So did they call you specifically because they know that you're reliable and have had success with them in the past? Like, how did you come aboard the project this time around?
I was up visiting. I went up with my agent, Mike Gorfain. We wanted just to say hi. So we went up to see some of our friends at Pixar and Jim Morris, who's head of Pixar, said he would love me to meet Pete Sohn, and Pete wanted to pitch to me. And so we went into one of their theaters and Pete pitched Elemental, and it was like, wow, this sounds fantastic, or looks fantastic, and signed on kind of immediately.
I love that. What did the pitch sound like? Did he describe like his personal story, and what resonated with you in regards to
that was part of it? This notion of what does it mean to have elements. I think he was saying that it was like an apartment building and this and that, and this notion of otherness. He is Korean American. He said it made him feel in many ways neither Korean nor American. So what did that mean? And these were issues that he kind of wanted to explore. What was it like to be an element of fire living across the river in Firetown and coming over on, I guess they call it the Wetro, to the big city where mostly water people lived. So that was part of his pitch, telling us the story. There was also kind of a show and tell where I see how these characters, a lot of times in Pixar presentations, they'll show you movement of characters, and which is always great. You just see this amazing artwork and maybe 30-40 minute pitch, and then it was like, wow, kind of take the jaw off the floor and put it back up and say, wow, this sounds great.
So every time you pop your head in there now, just to say hi, you're probably walking out with
well,
a job,
no,
basically.
It's because we had done, I worked on Finding Dory in 2015. So that was, 6-7 years ago. And I think, we'd had such lovely relationships with folks at Pixar. I just wanted to say hi. It really was an earnest wish to reconnect, which turned into this.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's a prominent song that plays throughout this movie, both in Wade and Ember's first date and then through the end credits, called "Steal the Show." Can you talk a little bit about working with Lauv? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Lauv, yes. And just what went into the creation of that song?
He was signed on to do it. We met over the internet or in Zoom environments, and we, I think, made arrangements to get together at a certain time. And in the meantime, I had put together several different ideas that I thought might be a good starting point for him. Came over and played these ideas, and he kind of got attached to one. We talked a little bit about it, and he said, do you mind leaving me alone for an hour? He was, very, very fluid in his work environment. And we literally went downstairs and sat around on a sofa and 45 minutes or so later, he said, come on up and take a listen to what I've done. And he was well on his way to structuring something with melody. And we kind of went from there. And we worked over a 2-day period. And then afterwards, we kind of kept going remotely. And, lo and behold, there was a moment where, he and a collaborator of his wrote lyrics, and a moment he sent it over. Here's the song. And it was lovely. It was lovely.
I can't help but just keep thinking to myself, I listen to the score for Shawshank all the time. 1917 has become a new rotation for me. Road to Perdition, I think, is like one of the best pieces of music I've ever heard, period.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know, what do you listen to in your spare time?
Not much. I talk to people a lot, like, what is this notion of being a listener? But I find that listening to music puts me in a doing place. I want to do more than listen. It makes me just want to create. And I sometimes feel selfish saying so, because music really is so communicative. But I'm not listening to as much as I should. How's that for a sly answer?
Hey, you know what? Most of the people I talk to, it's usually the exact same answer, no matter what department of the filmmaking process they work in. They're just so either focused on the job that they're working on or thinking about the next thing. So I totally get it. And specifically when it comes to working on Elemental, what unique challenges did you encounter when trying to create the score for this film? I know you mentioned before, trying to avoid stereotyping through the cultural aspects of the score,
Right.
but was there anything else on this that just was a unique experience for you along the way?
The way the beginning unfolds was very very interesting, because it's a mom and dad coming over, mom and dad going through immigration, doors slamming when they try to rent homes, finding a home. The elemental comes up, and now the baby is born, and we're moving through a montage of Ember kind of growing from a baby to helping at the store. So this notion of how do you keep that interesting, and how do you let the audience know that we're still moving forward to the start of our story, which I guess is when she finally blows up. It gets angry when she's behind the cash register. So the rhythm and pace of how all that took place was a challenging beginning, and I don't mean challenging because it was wonderful, but what was pace, and how far did it go to say we're now in our present tense story, because there's so much time that passes from the opening image to that.
So I have to ask this question because we're an awards website. 15 Academy Award nominations. What goes through your mind when you hear that statement? Because I know for myself and many others, when we hear that, we're like, get this man his due already.
I've heard that for years. I've heard, oh, this is going to be your year for years. So I try to just kind of, I'm grateful, obviously, to be recognized. But in the end, I think for me, I want to kind of just enjoy the music making and be grateful that I have opportunities. And if getting nominations helps me get more opportunities, then that's good. That's a non-answer, but that's about the best as I can.
No, it's totally fair. Do you still get enjoyment out of going to the show when you're nominated?
Sure. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, 15 times. I get it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
hey, listen, more to come, because the work is honestly, I mean, I don't know. I could toss out every adjective that I know possibly in the book. It wouldn't measure up to your contributions to our ears and just to cinema in general. So, Thomas, I once again just can't thank you enough for not just for this score, which I really, really loved and adored, but also to just the whole body of work and everything that you've done.
Yeah, that's really nice of you to say. It does mean a lot to hear it. So thank you.
Absolutely. We love asking this question to end our interviews. Can you tell us what you have coming up next?
I can't. I maybe could in a couple of weeks, but I can't right now. So
okay, all right, that's fair. That's fair. Are you able to tell us if you're reuniting with someone you've worked with before?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll take that. We'll take it.
You know.
Well, best of luck to you in the future, and congratulations once again on the score. As I said, it's a very beautiful, magnificent score.
Oh,
and
thanks. Thanks for the great questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thank you.